So, welcome to the Kickass Midlife Method podcast. This evening, we're talking about mindset, but particularly that kind of how to stop negotiating with yourself and create consistency, because consistency is the number one rule for change above anything else. It doesn't really matter, the exercise and the nutrition and all of that obviously creates a change, but if you haven't got the consistency, none of that will happen. So, I'm joined by some women from the Kickass community. And we're particularly talking about this as it's something that's coming up quite a lot. It's October, we're approaching October. I think there's also something around the change of season, which also kind of impacts this kind of year. We've come out of summer, we're definitely into autumn now, and then that begins to affect things. So yeah, as I was saying, consistency is your superpower. If you and we're coming across this quite a lot. If you only train and eat well when it's easy, you never see change because every time something scuppers you and you stop or you go off the rails, then you affect your consistency. And those people get the most progress are those people who keep with it even when times are hard, reach out for help. So I'm often getting, sometimes people will disappear for ages because I don't know, something has gone, it's really hard at work or it's really hard with something to do with relationships or family. And actually, it is about those times which are the most important to keep going and learning how to navigate that in that kind of the daily life of a midlife woman when all that kind of happens. So the thing that happens the most is actually our own internal kind of negotiator that crops up every time you're faced with a choice between what you should do in terms of how you should eat, your exercise, and what feels easier in the moment. So that's what we're dealing with. So we're going to cover why negotiation, your inner negotiator, is keeping you stuck. The five derailers that throw midlife women off track, recognizing the patterns before they hijack your progress. And then that predict and plan, the method to stay consistent so that you kind of can remove that mental tug of war with your planning. And then tools to reset and recover when the day goes wrong, rather than it just sending you off into a spiral and then you miss a week, you miss 2 weeks, and then that scuppers your kind of results in a way and it makes it feel really difficult to get back. So the struggle. So this is, your ideal day maybe is a 6, 7 a.m. gym session, your healthy breakfast is already prepped, you know what you're going to have. Say if you're going to work, you've got a balanced lunch at your desk or you've got a balanced lunch at home. You have a nutritious dinner, you don't drink wine, or you have a glass of wine, and that's quite satisfying, and that's all you need, and you get to bed at a reasonable time. So that's kind of your ideal day, what we're all would like to be energized, nothing gets in the way. When reality, from all of us, whether you're midlife or not, actually, is sometimes things like the alarm doesn't go off or you didn't sleep very well. So the alarm goes off and you turn it off and you think, I'll just have a sleep in because I feel exhausted and it's better that I have that sleep in. If you're working, it's a last minute client call or an urgent call from your parent or a carer that's looking after your parents saying they've fallen over or something's happened, child call, traffic chaos on the way home, emergency at home suddenly turns into snacks, wine, and then I'll just sort this out in bed with your iPhone. I'll just do a little bit more admin and suddenly it's a midnight. So this is the reality of where most women fall off. It's not a diet or exercise problem. It's a mindset and structure problem. And the real struggle is when the day goes wrong and you have to make those tiny in the moment decisions. And if you're not prepared for that and you don't have that structure in place, those in the moment decisions are often the wrong way. So we've talked about this a lot in the past, actually, if you've been on the program for a while, about how you create structure to prevent these things. It's always worth going over because we haven't got to where we are in 3 months. So therefore, unlearning some habits and behavioural habits that we fall into takes a little bit longer. So it's always worth kind of coming back to this and figuring out how we can create that structure. So the negotiation cycle. So this is kind of tends to be what happens. You often choose the easier option, or one chooses the easier option. You skip the workout. you grab the biscuits instead of maybe the more nutritious thing and you reinforce that behavior. So the trigger is a stressful day or you feel overwhelmed and you just think, oh, I can't cope. Or something happens and then the immediate negotiation comes into your head and you just think, oh, I'll just do it tomorrow, or I'm just going to have this. It's just this once. And then you choose the path of least resistance. Give me a two if you recognize any of this. And then the fourth thing is you do it, you do that, even though you think, oh, I'm not going to do it, and then you do it anyway. And then the next day or the next hour, you think, oh God, so annoyed with myself. And then you think, oh, never mind, I'll start on Monday. So give me a two if you recognize that. I think it's a really, really common default habit loop that we all do. So breaking this cycle, it's not immediate. Breaking that cycle, firstly, you have to be aware of it, and aware of it not just at the guilt stage, trying to create some reflection, understanding why your brain prefers comfort helps, and being open to trying something new, so that you kind of break this cycle. And this is why it happens. So your brain is hardwired to conserve energy. So this is another thing when I speak to some of you about actually you're not eating enough, is that means you get really knackered. So it's even more likely that you will conserve energy and go the easier way because you're just knackered. So your brain's designed to preserve your resources and keep you safe. Our life stage adds another bump in the road. Obviously, we hormone change can affect our sleep. It's not just hormone change; it's also lifestyle at this moment in time. Life. So not life state, lifestyle, life chapters. Are the kids at university needing help? We've got parental things. All of that impacts our kind of energy bucket. So therefore, again, it makes it a little bit harder, but it's not really about willpower and it's not that you're failing. All it is setting up systems that remove that debate. So really being transparent with yourself, thinking, when do I do these things? Like making sure you're aware of it, like setting up like almost like a little red flag document so that you're even writing it down so you are more aware. Because in our heads we're aware of it, but it's not sometimes until you talk about it or you write it down somewhere that you are become a bit more aware of it. Because if you know what it is, then you can plan in advance and you can bypass that part of your brain that will want to negotiate. And I do it all the time still. I think I've spoken about this before. I'll be in a gym and I'll have a heavy next set to do. Maybe I'll made it to the gym. Yay, great. But then my second or third set, I'll be like, oh, I've got to put the weight up. And then my brain will go, God, I haven't got back to that client. I better go, better and that is just my brain wanting to divert from the difficult thing. So if you know that in advance, you can plan for it. So let's go through the typical five derailers. Decision fatigue. So you worked so hard during the day, you've thought about so many different things that you've got absolutely no energy left to train. So you can't make a decision. So when you're thinking, so say you typically don't go in the morning and you think you're somebody who goes in the evening, but then you've done so much during the day, suddenly you've got your negotiator is saying, "Oh, you're really tired, maybe you could do it a different time," and then you're too fatigued anyway to make a decision, so you just don't do anything. All or nothing thinking. I'm sure some of you are a bit of a combination of all of these. If you can't do the full workout, if you can't do the workout to your maximum of your ability because you're tired and you don't think you can give it your all, well, yeah, I better not do it at all. I'll wait until a better day when I'm more energized. Just do it. Then there's the emotional triggers, stress, boredom, celebration, frustration, and then obviously the wine and the snacks and the Netflix all come in. And then the all or nothing thinking is quite like perfectionism as well. There's that kind of waiting for that perfect moment. You're waiting for that perfect, a moment that never arrives, that perfect moment when you haven't got any work on, when you're really energized, when, everything's going well at home. And if you keep waiting for that, it doesn't really happen. And then the other derailer is poor planning. No prepped food. I used to be terrible at this one actually, the no kit ready, or actually which I have done now. For instance, not finding my keys. Oh my God, it used to drive me into a rage. And I've done the simple thing of putting a key, what they called key hook up. Like literally so simple. So I don't no longer go into a tiz and be like, I can't go to the gym, I can't do this because I can't find my keys, I'm not going to get out the door. It can be something as simple as that, but you have to be aware of what it is. So yeah, so of these, so say you were going from 1 to 5, with decision fatigue being 1 and poor planning being 5, write down which is your top derailer for you in the chat box. So 1 to 5. 3, 2, 5, 3. Any more for any more? There's only about 4 people put those in. Yeah, looks like 3 wins. Emotional triggers. Emotional triggers is the win. So again, it's just being aware of that. And the other thing that's really important to think about with emotional triggers is you are more likely to be emotionally triggered if you're tired. And tiredness can come from 2 things, not getting enough sleep, and it can also come from not eating enough and not having enough carbohydrates. So there's like 2 things to think about there. So let's talk about the other thing that can derail you, because I wanted to talk about this in particular because it came up in the community this week about that dinner dilemma, because that seemed to be the one that was affecting people the most, that derails people. Eating out with others or going around to someone else's house for dinner, and or your partner, your family cooks off plan, and you can spend so eating out obviously what tends to happen, which I see sometimes in the tracking of people, is that you spend the day where you don't eat properly. And everyone says, no, no, I don't, no, I don't. But there's like literally 150 calories and then suddenly 1,500 at the end of the day. So that is definitely happening. Or the next day when you're kind of restricting because of that. And that's just really more damaging than just going out, enjoying it and moving on. Like one day out of your weekend, and not even one day, it's like one meal is not a big deal. This is about your life. It's about enjoying life and not being restrictive. The Kickass Midlife Method is not about restriction. It is about embracing life, and really going out for dinner is not a big deal nowadays. That it's not like the only options of Bernie Inns from the 1980s or something. We've got like fish restaurants, we've got meat restaurants, it's not difficult anymore to go out. And if to you that means, okay, you've got more wine and a dessert, it's not a big deal. It really isn't if all the rest of the time you're being really eating really nourishingly. The other one that I think has come up in the group quite a lot, which sends more people into a bit of a spin, is your partner or family cooking for you and it causing anxiety or almost like friction between you and your partner, your family, that you've added this to it and you can't add that to it, and you spend the whole time either feeling really anxious about the food and therefore you feel like you've got to control it and take control of it at all, or you feel a bit resentful and then the whole mealtime at home becomes really stressful. So obviously for the restaurant side ahead of time, you can do that kind of thing. And the same thing for the scenario two, really, is like maybe you can think about like, there's so many recipes now in the Kick-Ass Midlife Method that you could just be sitting down with your partner, your family, and go, what do you think? Which one would you like to do? Can you do that one? And I'll do this one. You could do it that way. Or again, accept your family cooking for you like your equivalent of a restaurant dinner, just let it go. Like, try not to do it all on your own, like all of the cooking to keep control of it. Allow them to do one, but ideally the best thing would be to get them involved in that cooking and looking at the recipes, because none of the recipes is not a diet. It's not like, okay, you've got to have, because I'm on this, you've got to have a salad with a bit of egg, they are good meals. So it's just about sharing that and just thinking, hey, which one do you fancy? And getting them involved. And then this predict and plan method. So, the ideal situation is that you remove that mental tug of war. So you remove that, even that negotiator in your head, so it's just not there. And the way you do that is to make sure you plan it so it never comes up. So we've talked about this before, but how many of you are actually really doing this still? Some of you from earlier on might have been doing it and then might have forgotten or it's slipped. So looking ahead in your diary a week ahead and red flagging those potential pitfalls. So whether you do it on a Sunday, a Monday, a Wednesday night after a call, whatever it is, it's really good to sit down and look ahead and just think, what are the pitfalls going to be? Have I got a late meeting? Am I traveling to work? Am I going to have to go look over after my mum? I've got no control of what the food's going to be like over there. What's going on with my younger kids? I've got to take the kids to something, and just doing as plan as much as you can and not giving yourself a hard time. If you plan it, you prepare something, but sometimes it's not possible to have everything that you want. But as long as you've planned it and you're aware of it, then that can help. Your workouts should just be scheduled, non-negotiable meetings like anything else, block time in your calendar. When that time comes up, I think some of you might have seen my story last night when I now have to do my gym in the evening sometimes because I'm running in the morning. And after a really long day, it's the last thing I feel like doing, but I just put it in my diary and I just go. And then by the time you've got in there, done a couple of the exercises, you're like, okay, it's okay, it's okay. But you just have to get past that negotiator that is just in your head going, oh, maybe you could do it tomorrow, maybe I could do it tomorrow morning, and then you don't do it tomorrow morning. Or you end up having so much loaded towards the end of the week, you've just made it really more difficult for yourself. There's that preloading, food shop done, your backup snacks in your bag, even if at the minimum, sorry, your backup snacks are like, 5 bars of barbells or whatever they're called, and you've got them in the cupboard, or 3 cartons of Tide for soups. It's just really simple things. Kit ready the night before if you're going out to the gym, or literally get your gym kit stuff ready for in the house if you're doing a gym workout at home. Yeah, and as I was saying, commit to the minimums. So create a fallback plan for when it is just impossible. And that's your better than nothing option, because the most important thing, going back to the beginning, is consistency. And it's not just about the consistency of of the exercise and the nutrition, it's your mindset. It's that commitment that you've kept to something. Like, how many of you sometimes will, in the past, probably, how many times have you been really successful? You've begun to lose some weight, you've done an exercise routine, and then summer holiday, you go on your summer holiday, you go on your Christmas holiday, and suddenly 4 months later, you suddenly think, oh, I've just lost it again. I mean, how typical is that? Give me a 6 if you've done that in the past, 7 if you've never done that, you've always come back from holiday and gone straight back to it and been on top. Yeah. 6, anyone else? Yeah, everyone's a 6. So sometimes that's why when people do go on holiday in this program, I say, I think Jenny's not here, I don't think. She's might still be on holiday. I say, try and keep to the travel program that I do, just from the point of view of consistency, the mindset of thinking, I've got something I've got to do. Because once the mindset gets out of that habit of being like, I'm doing something, then it's really easy for things to fall by the wayside. So this, I think, is quite good for a lot of women in here who are all, I think, quite high achievers, and is try not to set yourself a ceiling goal. So perfect workouts, perfect food. I'm all planned, I'm all prepared for those moments when you will have moments when things don't go to plan. Have a floor goal, the bare minimum. What's going to be your floor goal? So something so doable you could hit it and feel good even on the worst days. you know. So I've been speaking to a couple of people about that this week who have been struggling and just saying, you know, at the bare minimum, do drink your water and do your protein shake. And at least you feel like you're still holding on to some kind of consistency to the program. And that holds you in place, gives you a little bit of structure. So yeah, your bare minimum. You know, that could be also things like your protein with every meal. That's quite an easy one, you know. Um, you know, one day of the weekend eating unnutritiously, maybe, rather than three, you know, so your floor becomes your foundation rather than always aiming for some mad ceiling that you've got to hit. And when your plan fails, you know, pause, adjust, reflect, and move on. So, you know, rather than just thinking, I've failed, it's my willpower, it's my motivation, just look at what actually caused the downfall and learn from it. You know, failing, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but it's true. Failing is a chance to learn. It's not a failure. It's like, what can I learn from this and how can I put that into action next time? It's not a failure. It gives you the best. It's only a failure if you do it and you keep repeating it and you don't stop, reflect, and think, what has caused me to do that? How can I prevent that happening again? Um, and when things do go wrong, what's the next best decision I can make? So half a workout instead of no workout. 5 minute mobility of the warm up of the workouts that I set with people sometimes. If that's all you can do, you do that because that consistency will make a difference. You know, protein pot instead of the pastry. Glass of wine before, sorry, glass of wine before the water. Glass of water before the wine. So try and catch yourself in the moment. Don't judge it. Don't think, oh, I'm crap. Think about it and just think, oh, why have I done that? Take 3 breaths before you make your next choice. Uh, think about one tiny positive decision you can make that will just slightly change it. And then if you don't take that positive decision later, reflect on what you could do differently next time. It's all just about awareness. Um, and some kind of emotional cognitive strategies. So rather than saying I'm overwhelmed, just be like I'm frustrated. So what can you do to calm that response rather than just being like I'm overwhelmed, I'm out kind of thing. Because that tends to be what happens. I'm overwhelmed and I'm just going to disengage entirely from the whole thing rather than I'm frustrated. Okay, how can I deal with this frustration and move on from it? Again, the switch from I've blown it or I've messed up my diet because I've had a pastry in the morning. I might as well just carry on the ride all the way through the day. It's just a pastry, for God's sake. You know, it's like one pastry, the rest of the day is not ruined, or the rest of the week is not ruined. And then try and anchor your healthy habit to something automatic. So gym clothes by your bed, apple in your bag. Still seeing lots of people talking about like snacks. What can I have as for a snack? I think there's so much on Instagram at the moment around protein. I think people are forgetting that an apple is quite a good thing to have. So make the good choice, the nutritious choice, rather than good, sorry, rather than the easiest choice. So for going forward and to add into the group after this meeting, I want you to all think about what is your predict your biggest trigger. Either look back and think about what your biggest trigger is, or thinking ahead of something that's coming up. What is going to be your biggest trigger in the next week? Set yourself one minimum habit, your floor goal. So even on your worst hellish day, what's your going to be your non-negotiable? Claire, I hope you're remembering this whilst you're on your treadmill so you can write your and contribute to it afterwards and then practice your reset. So really, really, and this is like one thing I really want you to think about that like you really pause, reflect on things when they don't go to plan and adjust to it and move on rather than it being like you're just spiraling from one thing to the other. When you are spiraling, say it. Put it in the group if you're a group member, message me if you're a one-to-one member. There's like, you know, a number of people recently who've like spiraled and it's gone on for a while. So like the best way to put a stop to it is just you're in this coaching group. Coaching is not just about what exercise you're doing and what nutrition you're doing. It is exactly about how do you navigate the difficult periods, because that's obviously that's the biggest thing that's going to make you consistent. Staying consistent when you're easy, when everything life is going well, is easy. So remember, again, I talk about this loads. Sorry if I sound very boring. You don't need motivation, you don't need willpower, you just need a better system that works with you and what your reality is. Um, it's about progress, and it's about showing up and being like, what can I do to change my mindset? The structure that I've got at the moment is not quite working with me, rather than being like, it's me and my willpower, because it's not. It's simply just how do I adjust? And it might not go right initially. You just do the next step and think, okay, that didn't work. I'll try this, until you get the strategy and the structure that works for you. That's all it is. If you just put it, again, removing emotion from it when something doesn't work, and just thinking, okay, what strategy can I use? So thanks for joining, and I hope anybody listening to this along afterwards, if you've got any questions, then do comment on the podcast, like and subscribe to our next one.